Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, how millennials are changing Hawaii's workforce. Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. As Generation Xers take more senior positions in the workplace and baby boomers like me head toward retirement, the millennial generation is beginning to make its mark. The oldest millennials have begun to assume roles as managers, business owners, and community leaders. Their older bosses and coworkers say this new generation of workers' affinity for technology is already changing the way that Hawaii companies do business. Tonight on Insights, how millennials are changing Hawaii's workforce. We want to hear from you during tonight's show. Call 973-1000 if you live on Oahu, or 800-238-4847 if you're calling from a neighbor island. You can also watch Insights streamed live at pbshawaii.org. Just click on the title of tonight's show, or find us on Twitter at PBS Hawaii. Now to our panel. Ashley Lukens is the director of the Hawaii Center on Food Safety and a 33-year-old millennial mom. She believes many millennials value quality of life over bank balances, which leads many to take lower-paying jobs that have a positive impact on self, community, and the planet. Richard Kebo is a professor at Argosy University's Graduate School of Business and Management, as well as a consultant in leadership development, strategic management, and succession planning. He feels millennials offer an innovative and flexible mindset in the workplace and prioritize social responsibility. Samantha Ruiz is a 25-year-old regulatory analyst for the law firm Yamamoto Kaliboso. She is also the founder of Honolulu Soup, a micro-granting event that helps to pair entrepreneurial projects with community funds. Ms. Ruiz says millennials often work with their employers to create positions that benefit everyone involved. Jean Hamakawa is Bank of Hawaii's Executive Vice President and Director of Human Resources. During her 26 years at Bank of Hawaii, she's managed baby boomers, Generation Xers, and millennials, and these days millennials make up more than 40% of Bank of Hawaii's workforce. And let me start with you, Jean Hamakawa. What is a millennial by Bank of Hawaii's definition? Let's start with that.
Well, I think if you look at the research, millennials are defined different ways, but we use it as those born in 1977 or later. So the statistics I gave you reflect those numbers.
And how many is that? How big an impact is that on how you do business?
From an employment standpoint, it's a huge impact because, as you just said, it's over 40% of our workforce. So our ability to attract, engage, and retain these very important workers is key to our success.
Ashley Lukens, as a 33-year-old, the definition would put you somewhere toward the outer end of the millennials. What's been your experience? How do you think millennials relate differently to the workplace?
You know, I didn't actually identify or think about millennials until I became a boss. And I started to manage staff between the ages of 23 and 27. And I noticed that the senior staff above me was really struggling to understand the decisions that they were making, but I got it. So I became sort of the interlocutor between
translator.
The generations, and I actually probably more identified with the choices that they were making, but I had the privilege of being in a position of power where I could make those choices the norm for my team. But you know, my boss really struggled. I mean, I think he felt like they were entitled. Why did they want to come into work at 10? Why did they always have their cell phone? And it's like, I think that these are all life choices and tools that sort of make up how we interface in the world.
Richard Kebo from Argosy University,
Yes.
sorry. What does the science tell us about the difference between this generation and, say, a baby boom generation?
Well, this generation, I mean, I think we're looking at more of the innovative entrepreneurial mindset, wanting to come in at 10 o'clock, thinking about telecommuting at home, because if we got to come in and commute, then it takes away from the time we can work. But the dynamics are shifting, and so it's incumbent upon the organizations that are hiring these millennials to be able to flex and be able to be dynamic, so that way they can leverage some of the their strong points and some of their strengths that they bring to the organizations.
Samantha Ruiz, what is your impression of the difference? You're squarely in the demo, clearly.
Yeah, smack dab, right?
What do you think is the difference? I mean, how do you relate differently, say, than your parents to their jobs?
Yeah, I think I resonate with what Ashley and Richard are both saying. You know, I think we crave our own independence in the workforce. In some ways, I think looking at the workforce that we stepped into, in a lot of ways, we have to create our own terms. The economic downturn that we came into in, I would say, 2008 or so, really required us to, rather than climb the corporate ladder, kind of create a patchwork quilt of different experiences that needed to make us more diverse and suitable to the workforce. And so, you know, I think when people say that this generation is entitled, I think that kind of is qualified with the fact that we are creating our own opportunities. And in creating our own opportunities, we want to create our own terms. So, you know, I would say that I would love to come into work at 10, but I would also say that the firm that I work with is extremely great in you know, being flexible, letting me provide my own skills sets, et cetera.
Jean Hamakawa, are you seeing a significant difference, though, in how they come into the workforce?
Yes, because when you think of millennials as a group, and I don't like to label, we were talking about that before the show, but in general, I mean, these are folks that grew up, they're the digital natives. They're the first generation that grew up with technology literally at their fingertips 24/7. They get news in a different way. They're fed information a different way. I think their brains, I think you'll probably see that in the research,
Yes.
are wired literally differently because of how they take in information, how they filter information, and how it impacts their experience with the world.
Richard,
so you see that in the workplace.
So Richard, you were nodding vigorously when she was saying that. Is there literally a brain difference?
Well, I think the brain difference, you know, in my role as an instructor at Argosy University, you know, I'm tasked with teaching boomers and Xers as well as millennials. So I think that the innovative mindset and the ability for us to be dynamic and flexible within a classroom setting or within the real world setting allows the millennial generation to be able to facilitate these conversations and understand how to dialogue with different people.
So Ashley Lukens, translate that for me a little bit. How do you think, and again, we are labeling this group of people,
Pretty
and
much,
so
yeah.
it's really not fair to assume everyone in this generation feels the same way, looks the same way, but in terms of what he's saying, the interpretation of information, the collection of information, how is it different, or what's it like?
Well, one, I think that for me, it's not about processing information, but about communication and expectation and how communication feeds into our relationships.
Different ways of connecting?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We were talking about this earlier, but I've never really had friendships without instant messenger or texting. And so for me, I can maintain a relationship through text, through email. Whereas an older generation might feel more value on FaceTime and kind of generating in-person meetings. But we have a totally different communication skill set that allows us to maintain and build relationships in a sort of across space. And so from that, how we communicate, we can short messages, sure, call me right back, LOL, TBT. Whereas I think an older generation is like, that's an affront.
Takes a little time to figure that out.
Yeah, how I want to be communicated with and the message that I want to, hear at that time. So for me, it's not about processing information but about building relationships and how we do that. And that's a lot of what work is. It's about figuring out how we work together. Sure, there's the doing, and we all need to continue getting the job done, but how we get the job done and the kinds of relationships we need to get the job done is really different.
Samantha, let me ask, in your role in bringing together business relationships, when we talk about innovation and entrepreneurialism, what does that mean in terms of the way people act or behave or think?
I'm going to put on my community hat in this instance because I think what relates with what your question the most is this micro-granting dinner that I started, Honolulu Soup. And I really think it's about the collaboration and the cross-pollination that takes place in the room, allowing for everyone to feel like their voice matters.
Let me just stop you for a second. Roll back and explain your program, because I don't know that the viewers are going to get that right away. Yeah.
So Honolulu Soup is essentially a real-time crowdfunding event where.
And what's crowdfunding?
Oh.
Exactly.
So it's where people decide to pitch in a dollar to a project that they want to support, whether it's in their community or across the world. So the micro-granting dinner is similar to what we're doing right here, right now, where we sit around the table, we have some soup, there's about 80 people in the room, and you get to listen to 3 different projects that are taking place in the community, from local organizations to an individual off the street who thinks they have a really great idea. And it's on the community to then decide at the end of the night where they would like their community funds to go. And in that process, I think that the collaboration and the forum for people to share ideas and to talk to each other and really to view each other all in the same playing field allows for true communication.
So how is that
to come about.
suited to the millennial generation as it might not have been suited? Or is it just an opportunity that earlier generations didn't have?
On what end? From
On this idea of multiple tiny contributions. I mean, you couldn't do that with snail mail and checks, right? It's on the internet. That's the
right. And in this event,
the
it's
tool.
actually it's cold hard cash that one works away with. So your question is,
how does that relate to this issue of why millennials fit with that kind of a model?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I feel like one of the DIY is another one of those little do it yourself, figure it out. And a lot of us have great ideas, we have great projects, but the dominant institutions that give money and give support don't value our ideas yet. They think we're too young, we're not playing the game. The financial market is so restricted now, it's impossible to get grants. So we figured it out ourselves and we said, what if we all pooled $20 together, had some soup, and supported the project we think is the coolest? That to me is the best part of the millennial attitude.
That's the innovation, right?
I don't need to ask for
Innovation,
anybody's permission. Let's just do it ourselves.
Entrepreneurship at its
Richard, go
finest.
ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the entrepreneurship mindset is, getting a bunch of individuals together, having a conversation, and figuring out who wants to be at the table and to participate and contribute. I think with millennials, we're really civic-minded, right? We're looking out for the community. We're looking out for other people who are sitting at the table. So whoever has a vested interest or who feels like they're a stakeholder and they want to be a part of the conversation, they can jump in at any time. And the table is welcome. The table is a welcoming platform for anybody that wants to come and join, right?
Let me ask Jean Hamakawa. So here you are representing essentially a big financial institution. And you're speaking
And the boomers as well.
And the boomers, yeah. So as exciting as that sounds, how does that then translate into how you take that kind of energy and that kind of ideals in a workplace and take advantage of those as a big company? Do you see that as a big opportunity? Is that exciting to you?
I think it's a great opportunity, and I think as businesses are instituting more technology, how do you reach out to the community? What defines your community? Well, as we know from the statistics, boomers will be the majority part of the population by 2020, 2022. I'm sorry, not boomers, millennials. So we need millennials in our workforce to help us understand what does this population need, how do they want it delivered, how do we reach out to them, and do it from a platform of strength, meaning you have millennials designing for millennials, not boomers designing for millennials. And at Bank of Hawai'i, we've tried to do that with the physical space. We've redone one of our floors. It's a totally open floor concept. Lots of spaces.
It's the Google floor, right?
It's like a Google floor. Lots of room for collaboration, no hard offices. If you want to have a private meeting, you can go to a glassed-in meeting room, and there are a few of them you can reserve. But a lot of collaborative spaces, desks that can go up and down so you can stand and work, you can sit at work, chairs that are unconventional. The lunchrooms are completely open, and there's not a true definition of space, what you would normally think of an office with a corridor and a door and an office space. So it's built for the collaborative workspaces, which from what we know that's what millennials want. They don't want to be set aside in an office by themselves in the dark. They want to be able to reach out and touch when they want to do it. And so we feel an open workspace allows that. You know, we have a gym in our facility. That gym is open from, I think, 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. because you define when you want to go.
I think for us, a lot of this comes out of seeing what's not working for our parents. Like, why don't we want to get to work until 10? It's not because we want to sleep in. We're up working at 6 a.m. It's because we don't want to sit in traffic. And I don't think that's the best use of my time to sit on a road with 100,000 people that are just sitting there. Why do we want to collaborate? Because we've seen the way that people get alienated in their jobs and they feel disconnected from the impact that they're having. So we want to talk and connect. Why do we want a gym in the workplace? Because we have an obesity epidemic, because people are sitting at their desks. So in some ways, we're seeing what's not working. And we're saying, we have the power to solve it, but we're not going to solve it as individuals. We're going to solve it together.
Let me ask Richard Kemble, the societal thing. Okay, so generation begets generation, right? And it sort of hops over one, right? So, my kids are millennials. I'm a baby boomer. And so I hear what Ashley is saying, and I'm thinking, are my kids taking a different course because they don't want to follow the course I did? Is there a generational rejection that's happening with this generation?
Well, I think that there's definitely some awareness of what's going on, and if there's a generational gap within there, they're looking at taking the best of the best, right? So if their parents are boomers, they're going to take the best traits from the boomers. They're going to look at the Generation X and going to take the best traits from the Generation X, and then if they're millennials, they're going to be able to look around at their peers and say, hey, this is what's going on, and maybe I should use a little bit of this and a little bit of that and kind of mix it up and hodgepodge it together and make it work.
I also think that, in today's world, there's so much access to whether it's the sharing economy or talking to a friend or connecting with another entrepreneur across the world. There's so much access for millennials to really create an opportunity for themselves that hasn't existed ever before. And so in some ways, the playing field is wide open for a lot of us. And so, I also think that that's when you look at a pillar of our generation, I think in some ways collaboration is greater than competition for millennials. One, we're the largest generation to date, and so competition is almost moot in some ways. Why not work together to then get to the end goal? And I think that aligns with a lot of our societal values as well.
I think, when we're knocking down walls, like literally in Bank of Hawaii, right? We're knocking down the walls. Millennial generation is knocking on the door and saying, hey, we don't want this door here. What's really starting to happen is that our work is our life. Like, we don't do this 9 to 5. I know that I'm getting text messages and emails at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's like almost 24 hours. It's now I choose when to work. Although there are meetings and there are times where I have to meet deadlines, but I'm always working, and I like it like that because the work hours aren't 9 to 5 anymore.
I know I get chewed out by younger folks at my place if my phone is not on at 9 o'clock. I say, well, I've got a home phone for that. I feel like a very old man when I say that. Is that the kind of thing that in working with the older generations, particularly at a bank, which we all picture Mary Poppins. You guys remember Mary Poppins?
There you go.
Dad was a banker. Anyway, sorry. I'm going to get in trouble in this show. But I mean, how well do the older workers and managers relate to what's going on with this very large cohort of their coworkers?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the individual. Many are like you, where their kids are millennials, so they're relating to people who are their kids' age. And some of them have a better understanding than others. And we try to promote understanding, and we have a talent management and engagement course that helps the boomers, mostly the boomers, kind of understand really what are the expectations of these different generations. And it is different, but different doesn't have a value on it. We were talking about that earlier. They're not difficult, they're different. So because they're different, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of speed of feedback, how you define jobs?
I prefer unique. What do you think?
How you define rewards and recognition, how you provide feedback, what kind of coaching, what do you mean by mobility in the workforce? So we have to kind of define and redefine that for our managers, because there is some of that difference?
I think millennials need almost sort of quarterly evaluations, whereas an older generation can do with an annual. We need constant feedback.
I want it quicker than quarterly.
Yeah,
I want it after every memo.
we need a clear
Oh, yeah.
path to promotion. When I start my employees, I say, 10 years, where do you want to be? And everything we do is working them towards their professional goal. I never assume my employees are going to stay with my organization. It is always about the next step. And if they stay, that's a bonus. But I just don't have the mentality that I'm going to hire someone, they're going to be with me for a long time. So we're working towards their goals. We're constantly evaluating. And every single millennial I've hired, we've changed their title and we've changed their position description.
Samantha, let me, you seem like you were very interested in that idea of getting the quick feedback as an employee. Why is that so important?
Well, I think it goes back to us redefining the workforce in general. In some ways, we are creating our own terms, we're creating our own opportunities, and in some ways, we have to make that align with the boomer generation as well. And so for some millennials that come into large organizations with really structured ways of operating, we have to kind of take 2 steps forward, 1 step back to make sure that the progress we're making is also aligned with the structural progression of the organization as well.
You work in a law firm, right?
Right.
So I was just thinking, well, Bank of Hawaii has got a different business product than a law firm, which is, this is the law, and it would strike me that a law firm is not the ideal place to take down the walls and have everybody hearing everybody else's conversation.
Quite the opposite. Well, no, and it's interesting because the position that I'm in the law firm, like I said, the firm is very forward-thinking. They actually hired me for a position that's never existed before. So they're actually open to trying a new model and seeing, how do we fill a gap with someone that's young, that's excited, that's passionate about this sector. And so, but still, you have to be cautious in the way that you operate. Even though it's a new position, there are still billable hours.
It sounds like what you guys are saying, though, to a certain extent, is you really have a very high expectation of enjoying your work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are surprised that I'm saying that, because I think that's a major difference between generations. I don't think most of us, when we started, expected to enjoy our work until we had paid the dues.
That goes back to the entrepreneurship, right?
You gotta enjoy it.
Okay.
The entrepreneurship mindset again, where if we don't like what we're doing and it doesn't carry that passion and it doesn't drive us every day, then we're going to be looking for other opportunities, whether it's moving to a different organization or starting up another business or working with another business that's
moving to an entirely different city.
Right, and sometimes millennials get the blame that they're not loyal, but in fact, it's actually the opposite, that we've seen the downsizing, right? We've seen the layoffs. And so if we know that we can get the pink slip any day now, then we're going to be forced to look at all of our opportunities and be able to move around our chess pieces, so to speak, so that way we can capitalize on our skills and we can use that to our own
I think we're loyal to our values.
Sure.
I think I would look at rates of depression in this country, again, rates of obesity, there are indications that people are not happy with what was. And so we're figuring out how to change that.
Let me get a couple questions in from our viewers before we hit our midpoint, because they're starting to come in, and some interesting questions. How do millennials handle conflict at work? Let me start with who deals with conflict at work all the time. What's your opinion about that? Is it different, or is it... if you want to be happy all the time, there's going to be conflict, right?
Well, the difference that I see it literally in the workplace. Half of my direct workforce are millennials. Is what tends to happen is as direct as you all are, it tends to be less direct, because you will go to a friend first, you will vet, test, before you go to the boss. And I think when you look at the boomer generation, and we were raised that if there's a conflict, you go to your boss.
Yeah, stay in channels.
Yes, correct. You stay within channels and go up chain versus go lateral first.
Yeah, you can get in big trouble in workplaces I've been in if you find out you're talking stink about the boss behind his back.
Right.
That's what that's about.
So you find that difference. The positive side of that, though, the refreshing part of that is it is vetted. it is discussed and it is aired. And I'd rather have it aired than be held in because you don't want to talk up chain, right? Isn't it better that it's discussed and open?
Samantha, I'm curious as to how you feel about that question.
Yeah, I would say that I want transparency across the board. Yeah, really no delay in the issue. If there's something that's not working for one or both parties, then let's have it out. Let's find out ways that can work. I don't want the discussion to primarily focus on what's wrong, but more so how can the two parties reach an agreement to make it work for everyone. You know, I think millennials want to avoid the pink slip rather than.
I tell my employees, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions.
Right.
And I think that's the millennial
That's
attitude.
been consistent across the
But
generation.
I think that's generational
Yeah, that's-
consistent.
But we're more open to those.
Because in a way, that line, even though I agree with you, and that's a great way of saying things, what I wanted to ask Richard on that is that how well do older workers respond to that kind of an attitude? Like, let's air this out now. Wait a minute. Sit there, do your time, and then we'll talk later. You know, is there a lot of conflict like that going on?
I mean, I think there are times where, you know, millennials get shut down because, you know, either they don't have the expertise or they don't have the seniority. And so maybe their word isn't as strong or doesn't carry as much weight. But nevertheless, there's a conversation that needs to happen. And whether it's aired on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you know, there's going to be some signs that are going to be pinging around, whether it's in the workplace or online. And those things need to be worked out immediately so that way all the individuals involved in the organization can move forward as a whole.
Go ahead.
I also think that lends itself to the type of people that millennials are. You know, across the board, I think millennials hold themselves to a higher expectation than a lot of other generations, no offense, just because of the experiences that we have to create for ourselves. We have to be overachievers to some extent. And so I think we want the constant feedback and we want the communication and we want things to be aired in a transparent way so that we can continue to be the best that we can be in the position that we're in.
Let me ask a couple more questions. I think that these are really interesting topics. We'll get to them a little more in depth later on when we talk about what's the best way to deal with some of these circumstances that come up in the workplace, because I think we can explore that a little bit more. I want to get a couple more questions in before we take a break from our audience. A lot of fascination with the connected generation, with the texting. And can millennials ever turn off since they are always on their devices? And what about attention span? Do millennials have trouble focusing at work? I'll put that to either one of you.
I mean, I think we've developed different rituals to manage a frayed attention span. And we've used technology to support those rituals. So there are apps on your phone where you can turn off your email and social media for 45 minutes so you can focus. I think we've created jobs and positions that allow us to be a little more ADD.
Is that, I mean, now ADD is an actual medical term, but I mean, is that sort of a way of describing this generation?
Yeah, but aren't like 70% of us now ADD? It's like, maybe it's not a diagnosis. Maybe it's just a response to constant stimulus.
Well, it does kind of go back to the point of actually having a different wiring of the brain due to the life online. Mm-hmm. What do you think, though, Samantha, about that question about how do you disconnect? Do you need to disconnect every once in a while?
Yeah, actually, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and they were like, can you just leave your phone at home? And I've been thinking about it more, and I do think it's important to disconnect sometimes. I do, at work, sometimes I'll leave the phone on a different shelf so I'm not distracted immediately because I do have to focus and digest information. But I also think that it really allows for the work flexibility that a lot of millennials are looking for, too. The constant checking isn't always mindless. I think most of the time it can be very productive, and we have the world at our fingertips when you think about it sometimes. So, yeah, in the debate of whether we have to turn it off or not, I think I'm somewhere in the middle of that spectrum.
It sounds like there's a feeling that in a lot of ways having this kind of connectability, this ability to really multitask is an asset. Mm-hmm. You know,
yeah. I think it's an asset, but then I also think that it also sets a different expectation for the other person on the opposite end of the line in some ways too. I mean, I know from an attorney's standpoint, a lot of people feel like now that we have this connectivity and access all the time, the client's expectation is a lot different.
Yes,
Sure.
yes.
You know, we'll get calls 3 or 4 times from the same client while we're in a meeting. And is that because of the expectation that we're always connected?
A lot of that is true. I'm going to take a little break to remind our viewers that tonight we're talking about how millennials are changing Hawaii's workforce. Please call, email, or tweet your questions and comments. Call 973-1000 if you're calling from Oahu, and 800-238-4847 if you're calling from a neighbor island. A couple of our callers are curious about the statements were made before about creating your own rules. So one person said, are millennials able to create their own rules because they're still being subsidized by their parents? Samantha, I'll let you try that one first.
Yeah, good one.
So I'm not subsidized by my parents,
Okay, all right,
except
good.
for my cell phone. But outside of that, I pay my rent, I pay my own bills,
But I mean, I guess generally...
The cost of living has gone up exponentially. I mean, how much did you pay to go to UH?
$242 a semester.
Right. I'm in $120,000 of debt from college and grad school. So I'm coming into the workforce with such an insane debt burden. The cost of living in Hawaii, I think the average person to pay for an apartment, groceries, needs to be $50,000 to $70,000
No, it's closer
a
to
year.
100,000. No,
So it's not that we're getting support from our parents because we're entitled. It's because the cost of living in the U.S. is through the
necessity.
I think
roof.
it forces us to be a lot more savvy in our choices that we're making as far as work, as far as life balance, kids, the discretionary income things that we like to enjoy. So, we're put in these situations that we didn't ask for. And then, the millennial generation is looking at this and saying, all right, so what is my best choice? Pay my own rent and eat concrete, or live at home and be a little bit more comfortable. And it's nothing wrong with staying home because, again, the millennials are civic minded and they want to be closer to family. And if that's what's going to be the better choice out of the whatever's on the plate, then, that's what's going to be.
Gene Hamaka from Bank of Hawaii. I mean, the debt load that many of your young employees come in with, how does that affect the way they relate to you as an employer?
There is an expectation salary-wise. I think the feedback that we had talked about, the speed of the feedback, also relates to the speed in which people expect increases, additional job responsibility, which would lead to salary increases, recognition that may not just be verbal, but maybe financial recognition. So it all comes together.
In that sense of, Samantha, I know that we talked also about the amount of debt that you had. Is it sometimes so much that it's like, I can't even think about this? Or is a big part of your lifestyle paying off debt?
I don't think I'm a true representative of all of the millennials when I say this, but yeah, in some ways I try not to think about it only because that's not going, from a values perspective, that's not where my mind is focused. My mind is focused on what's going to allow me to make the most impact and the best impact in this world. And so if that means going to law school and incurring another $100,000 of debt, that's a risk I'm willing to take because of the service that I know that I'll be able to provide in the next 5 to 10 years. I think with big risk comes big reward. And so it's a matter of weighing that opportunity. And in some ways, I think the millennials have shown that we're so adaptive that I don't want to say that there's no fear, but the fear spectrum has lessened because we have gotten so creative with how we can make money and how we can generate income and, pay off our loans in different ways.
This is an interesting question from Sam and Aina. Are millennials generally happy? Happier? I'm curious. I mean, you guys have been through a lot. I mean, most of you came into the workforce but after 2008 when there was a huge recession coming in with big debt. I mean, I thought that was a pretty good question.
I think that work-life balance has a lot to do with happiness. Financially, we know that money can't buy the happiness, and the increases in income help pay off the bills, but the happiness comes from being able to be flexible, be able to balance the work-life demands. And
I think one of the things that's missing from this conversation generally is that I don't seek happiness, I seek impact. And I hear that when I hear Sam talk. Like, I want to know I'm making the world a better place.
We hear the word relevance a lot in this generation. I hear that's a really important
But I mean, think of
value.
the future we're facing, climate change. I mean, that's not a joke to us. The complete destruction of our natural environment. I mean, the economy becomes peripheral when all the resources that fuel it are at their tipping point. And so for us, it's like, I don't want to be happy. I want to know I'm giving back to the earth that provided for me, to my family that provided me. So it's like, I don't seek happiness. I seek passion. I seek value. I seek balance. I seek something more. I seek positivity, I guess.
Right.
So it's different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as a millennial, I would say that I'm generally happy, but I do think it also ties into the political agenda that we were raised in as well. I mean, Obama came in with a campaign that said, yes, we can. And so I think that kind of reinvigorates the collective attitude in some ways about what millennials can do and the attitude that we have on this world versus, you look at Gen X, and 9/11 was a huge, huge impact in a lot of their lives. And that kind of was more aligned with the 60s and 70s, anti-protest, the government's against us, and had more of a negative connotation associated with it than the Obama campaign, where
what you're both bringing up is a really interesting point. Is that the environment that you folks came into the working world and came through your teenage years of formation of your consciousness was very different from the one I came into, and so on. I came in during Vietnam, during 1968. That's when I was being formed. So my attitudes might be very different. Richard, I'm curious as to how much do you think what we talk about millennials is really a result of the society forming them, as opposed to assuming that it's because they have cell phones that they're different?
Sure. So every generation has this peer experience where they've been experiencing these things in their community and in the world, in their country, and so they're bracketed according to their experiences. Now, that pressure from society is forced upon those specific generations, and the generations, therefore, are reacting to the pressures. And so, we are seeing maybe global warming. We are seeing different things affect our community, and now our mindset is, okay, if this is what we inherited, then we're going to bring the solution to the table rather than crying about it and not doing anything about it. So it goes back to that passion, right? Is what is going to fuel us every day to know that we're making an impact to change things that we see maybe we inherited, and we want to make a difference. We want to be able to say at the end of the day, we touched somebody's life, or we cleaned the beach, or we were able to help some individual or organization.
Gene, do you feel and do you get pressure from employees that we want to do something outside of work or alongside work that is satisfying our social service need or our need to express, change the world, as opposed to
So this is how I experience it at the bank. We have a very robust employee volunteer program. You see the Banco Blue Crew out several times a week. I went back and looked at it because I knew we were going to be talking today, and I think we had 102 events in 2007. Sorry, I didn't get the count for 2015 because it's too soon, but 2014, 102 events in the community by volunteers from Bank of Hawaii. That's, it's more than 2 a week. So we're out there, and it's staffed by all generations, not just millennials. But that is important. That has impact to millennials, that we're the kind of organization that working in our community is important, whether we're cleaning up beaches, serving meals at IHS, repainting the sidewalks and the picnic benches at Ala Moana Park. I mean, our employees want to know that we're doing something in the community that we live, that we believe to be a healthy bank, we have to have a healthy community, and health is defined in different ways.
And then for you folks who are of this generation also, and I include you, Richard, in this, is it
Tug of war, right?
we had a question from one viewer. Are there certain industries that are more inviting to millennials? And I'm not sure whether this means the industries are inviting them or the millennials want to go to those industries. But are we seeing something like that, where there's some people are having a harder time recruiting than others, and some things that millennials just won't do?
It's as far as teaching at a private university, I think that is not one of the professions that a millennial wants to get in. It's really structured. You have rules and regulations to follow.
It takes a long time to get to that place where you could be a professor, right?
Yes. So I've been very fortunate through the relationships I've established, and I've been given some really great opportunities by mentors and leaders that have coached me along. And so, taking those opportunities and into the classroom and being able to use my skills to the best of my ability and be able to teach everybody from boomers, Xers, all the way down to millennials. And we even have some veterans who are coming back to school to learn. And so I think that, with the passion that we put out there in the community and the way we can be dynamic in the classroom really stimulates all the generations.
Let's talk a little bit about that work-life balance thing that we were talking about before. And let me ask Jean, do you get a sense that the employees who are, say, below 34, 35 are more interested in work-life balance than the same age employees 10, 15 years ago?
Yes. And actually, I think the term is not work-life balance, it's life balance or life-work balance. Because, as my colleagues here have said, so you start work at 10 o'clock in terms of facing the office. That doesn't mean you're not working. But you might then go and drop your kid off at school, see a program at school, and then come into work for a little bit. And then you might leave, go do something else that might be a personal responsibility. And then you're online at 7 o'clock at night after dinner, and you're online to 10 o'clock at night. So I think it's around balance, it's around flexibility, and I think you have to have employers that are going to understand that in the end, it's productivity and production. It's the impact that you talked about.
Though, you're involved with a bank, right? Where people have to stand at a window for 6 or 8 hours.
Right.
And there's certain face time they have to maintain in the business. What kind of accommodations have you made in order to accommodate that need of that particular generation?
That's a great question. And I think it depends on the roles. And I think certain roles you're going to require individuals to be in their seats for certain times, because when you come in to bank with us, we want to be sure we're there to help you.
Exactly.
So if we give banking hours,
we don't
we
need to go in the bank anymore.
Yeah, Actually, as a mom, and as a boss, how does that translate into the way you enforce policies in your own workplace about people handling their kids?
Well, I love that you think I would even have policies. So, but I mean,
that old-fashioned.
Yeah. I will say I'm the only parent on my team, and how does that affect my life? I mean, I definitely only require 10 to 4 in office hours. Everybody's allowed to be flexible otherwise. I absolutely relax obligations for myself during spring and summer, and I plan our work calendar around that. I mean, I recognize that I'm in a position of privilege. I run a small organization. I'm at the top as a parent. But I think a lot of the responses that millennials are having are also watching their mothers struggle in a double bind. I mean, I know that it is incredibly difficult to be a mother and a full-time employee. I mean, you're just missing the lunches, you're missing the pickups, you're putting your kids in programs over the summer when you remember your own free summer days wandering the neighborhood. So we have to innovate. We can't create a generation of women that don't feel empowered as mothers or employees. And so I think the millennial turn is also like a very pro-mother turn. Because it's allowing women the flexibility to say, I got it. But I'm gonna drop my kid off at school.
Richard, that's an interesting point in that this is also a generation that does not accept the discrimination that we all were sort of used to of men and women having different positions in the workplace. And that's a very interesting point that you just made. Do you think that there is a fundamental higher expectation of family, or how does the typical millennial, and I'm sorry to say typical millennial because that's a generalization, but is it a different approach to family? Are they having children later? Are they getting married later? That's what the statistics say.
Yeah, and I think because of the pressures, you know, we know that we need a good career so that way we can support a family. And I think that with the millennial turn and being pro-mom, I think this is where the younger generation, like myself, we start doing some of the non-traditional roles, like washing dishes, like washing clothes, like changing diapers. I mean, those are some of the things that I do in our home, so that way my wife has extra time so she can have a career as well. And so this balance, this millennial shift is causing all of these traditional boundaries that have been placed upon us to be kind of pushed back, and we're saying, what's going to be the best benefit for everyone involved?
You know, we were talking earlier about how I was raised with Ozzie and Harriet and my three sons and everything else. And these young ladies both said who. And, you know, Samantha, I'm curious as to, you have an expectation of equality with whoever your partner would be, right?
Yeah, quality.
Equality.
Oh, equality. Of course.
As opposed to being, you know, the little mom at home.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that.
And that's across the board. That seems like an absolutely generationally firm value.
But I think also, I mean, as a mom, we also really support the choice to be a stay-at-home mom as well. Sure. I mean, if a woman chooses that, that's her choice. It's not because her husband resigned her to that. And I think a lot of dads are picking up the slack because it's almost impossible for a single wage family to exist in Hawaii anymore. So it's like there are these structural dynamics that are changing us, but there's also these attitudes. And I think at the core, if you boil it all down, to me, what I understand to be different about my generation is this commitment to collaboration. We're partners. Right. We're not husband and wife. That's what we say now. I want to collaborate with my. I feel so uncomfortable calling myself a boss. You know, I'm your colleague. This is my team. We want to collaborate. We want to demonstrate and communicate impact. And we want to know that we're not suffering for the sake of suffering. If there's suffering, let's solve it.
Samantha, when you talk to your girlfriends about expectations at work, what kind of stuff do you hear about the way they're treated at work, their attitudes toward it?
I mean, frankly, they seem pretty happy with the workplace. I think more boomers and older generations are starting to understand that who they will be hiring for the next 10 to 15 years is going to be millennials. And so there is a challenge on the other side as well to figure out how do we motivate people differently.
That's a very important point, and it's something we haven't gotten to that I meant to, and this really affects the bank and big companies, and the company I work for, Hawai'i News Now, where we're constantly trying to guess what the millennials want, because that's a huge audience, you know, and you know, the phone, this is where TV's going, right? And so we're constantly trying to guess where it's going. And, you know, for marketing purposes, you know, it's good to have folks around that can help you. I mean, there's a bottom line good reason to know what millennials want, what millennials need. And does the bank, you guys have that part of your culture?
We do, and we're still working on it as well, right? Because millennials are getting to the point now where in our leadership team, they're now becoming a more significant role. So as you said, you don't like to be called bosses, you work at teams. So, you know, we're figuring it out as well. But when we look at what the bank does, when we talk about 102 events that you can go volunteer in the community, be part of the Bank of Blue Crew. Our employees raise money through our Live Kokua program to donate back, and the employees get to vote. Where does that money go? How do we want to distribute the money this year? Where does it go? And we have a lot of big team celebrations. We have a rally coming up next month. We just did the tree lighting ceremony in downtown where we had the trolley rides going around. We had all those community partners that we donated money to come and receive their checks from all of the funds that employees raised, over $600,000.
Let me throw this out then. On that point, as consumers, how are millennials different, do you think, from the other generations? I mean, it strikes me that my daughter likes to go to the mall, but she doesn't buy anything there. She buys everything.
I think Tom's shoes
Yeah,
is the
defines
perfect
it.
example. Tom's. They're
Right.
ugly,
The
first of all.
But the donation back,
But
right?
they donate another shoe to communities in the global south, and we like that. So suddenly an ugly shoe became the most popular shoe because of the impact.
Right.
And now all products are demonstrating.
I would say it's two-pronged. I would say it's impact, like the Tom shoes, and I would also say it's choice as well. I think more than ever, millennials want choice in what they buy and what they purchase. You look at Colorado, and a group of students formed a grassroots coalition to overthrow their utilities so that they could create a cooperative, so that they could have choice as to where their energy was coming from. And you looked at the diversity of that group, and they were college students all the way, I think, to maybe 35, 36 years old. And here you are having a group of relatively young students say, hey, this is an industry that has been vertically integrated for so long. We want to change that. We want a choice because we're paying you a bill. And
Well, it sounds like you want control to a certain extent too, right? I mean, isn't that a big part of it? As opposed to the megalithic
Input.
thing?
We want input. And I would also say locally owned. I think you're
Yeah.
also seeing a return to the local in a really powerful way. We don't want corporate standardized products. We want niche. We want character. We want to know the business owner. We want to
Sure.
know the farm where the chicken was raised before it was put on our plate. Like, that's what we want.
Okay, let me throw out some more questions. This is getting back to the point we were talking about. It was potential conflict in the workplace, the struggle to deal with the changes that are happening in society. When millennials are turning down more, oh, that's the wrong question, sorry. Is it your experience that many entry-level millennials have a reputation for expecting fast promotion, yet are unhappy spending time learning the basics of an organization? Let me throw that at you, Jean.
I hear that. I hear that. The negative side is they don't want to put in the time. They don't want to do the reps, the repetitions to learn the work. They want quick upward mobility, quick salary recognition. On the other hand, I do agree with what they've said is I think the adaption and adoption rate on how can we create something quicker, better, faster, whether it's a spreadsheet, a new way to look at a problem, a different way to analyze an issue, coming back in a nice, neat package that other people can understand. Is it quicker? Sometimes it is.
So they actually, without making them do the reps, they might have a better way that you don't need to do the reps.
They may.
I wanted to say something.
in some ways, I agree and I disagree with that concept. I think that within work-life balance, there is a need, life and work, we're constantly learning. And I think that that's something that millennials really appreciate in this day and age, is how much can we learn? What is the learning value that we're getting from every experience, not just from life, not just from work, but it as a sum total. And so, when I think about myself in the workforce, I don't necessarily think about the salary or the promotional raise. I'm thinking about, am I getting the best learning opportunity out of this? Is the 10 to 12 hours that I'm putting in the office, is that going to translate to me understanding my sector better? Can I be a more vocal person on this issue because of the time spent and the mentors that I have working with me?
Here's a question. The viewer thinks that we are paying too much deference to the feelings of millennials. He thinks they should be told to worry about buying a house rather than their feelings.
We call them the feels. That's the lingo.
And we can't buy a house, it's too
All the
expensive.
feels.
Yeah, we can't buy a house, so all we have
all
left of our
feelings.
feelings. We got debt and we got our feelings.
That's it.
The millennials.
Well, but okay, let me phrase the question this way. We all went through a period when we were young of being incredibly idealistic. I was certainly that way too. And then something called responsibility comes in, right, where you feel that, okay, we've got to pay for this house, we've got to start our family, and that. Do you think that what we're talking about now, the millennial generation, will ultimately turn into be much like we are now when they are our age?
No, because we don't have the time that you had. Our planet is warming. our oceans are rising, our economy keeps crashing, and so it's like the whole stick it out, we can't. So now we're just like, you know what, we're gonna lead with our hearts and our intuition and our emotion, because we don't have a lot of time.
And our innovation in some ways. I think, the sharing economy is something that has popped up within the millennial generation. And I would say that that is providing us the means to own a house in a different way.
In a different way.
So owning a car in a different way, sharing responsibilities in a different way. So I don't necessarily think millennials need to worry about purchasing a home, but how can we own a home without fully purchasing? Does that make sense?
No, it's a change in expectation.
Yes.
Sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Because it's
whole
just
ownership.
it's transportation in a different way, not necessarily owning a car, right? How
Right.
do you transport from one place to the next?
Yeah.
How do you live? Does that mean you have to own a home?
But I think it's just because what the idea that the generation before gave us about what a good future is isn't possible. The earth can't sustain everybody having their own
a
home
great point.
and their own car.
And we are, at that point, we are out of time. Thank you so much. I'm going to thank our audience and also talk about next week's show, where we're going to be talking about how Hawaii's weather has made it a premier vacation destination. But researchers at the University of Hawaii Sea Grant Program say changes are afoot in the coming years. The state can expect higher temperatures, more storms, and a rise in heat-related illnesses, as well as a sea level rise of 1 to 3 feet by the turn of the century. Actually, we were just talking about this. On the next Insights, the impact of climate change on Hawaii. That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. Ahui ho.